How you doing, everybody? Woo! Thank you. Appreciate you giving us a little bit of feedback here. When I asked you the first week of class what you really wanted to get out of this to make sure that we're providing you that value and we're hitting what you want, strong consensus came around operations, how to construct a company, how to run a company, and really understanding what it means to operate that for a long-term basis. I cannot think of a single person better to educate you on that than the alum that we have coming in here today. Mitch is an incredible individual, not only for being a founder and for being a CEO for 25 years of a company that he ran and employed dozens of people, but he is an incredibly candid, forthright, authentic individual who is going to give you honest answers about what it means to have that experience. I could go on and on about introing it, but frankly, it doesn't do it justice. Please help me welcome Mitch Rohde.
Clickers away. Awesome. Thank you very much, Eric, and thank you for the kind welcome. Great to see you all here. I'm excited. It's a Friday. It's good that you guys brought out the great weather. I really appreciate that. That was really nice of you. I have to say this is totally different. When I was a student here in the 90s, the entrepreneurship class was maybe 20 engineering students. And what I remember about that class was pretty much we played Monopoly. And literally played Monopoly. And I don't remember exactly what the point of playing Monopoly was, but it was a very important part of the class. So hopefully you're going to get more out of this talk than playing Monopoly. As Eric said, I'm a U of M grad. I spent the entire 90s here doing electrical and biomedical engineering degrees. I had a really, really good time, as you would expect from someone who spent an entire decade up here on North Campus. But it's been great, and I'll talk to you a little bit about my entrepreneurial journey. Hopefully it's useful to you guys. Hopefully you get something out of it. And I'm certainly happy to take questions later. I think if you want to do a company, one of the first things, and I'm sure you guys have thought about starting a company, is opportunity identification. Like, what kind of company are you going to start? What are you going to do? And people always ask me, like, quantum signal, that's kind of a funny name for a company. Like, you guys must do quantum signal processing or something. I'm like, no. They're like, so what did you do? Like, well, I like to say in a nutshell, this is like cocktail parties or with your family at like Christmas and holidays. We were AI before AI was cool. So back in the late 90s, I was a graduate student with another graduate student here at Michigan, and we were trying to figure out what we could start a business in. We were signal and image processing dorks, which meant we used algorithms and math to find useful information out of noisy data sets, which was a thing. When I was a grad student, I was working on neural interfaces and implants for folks with disabilities, and my friend was working on things for Alzheimer's and epilepsy and other stuff. And so we had spent a lot of time doing signal and image processing and developing algorithms. We thought maybe out in industry there would be use for algorithms and consulting on algorithms, and so we formed Quantum Signal because we saw lots of opportunity in a lot of different fields. We had a core expertise in a technology, and we could do consulting and help people out and see if we could get that technology out and about. Of course, nowadays, everybody talks about AI. Everybody talks about algorithms. You can't turn on the TV without that, which is just goes to show it's really a different time. We would go in and try to sell to potential customers, and these folks would look at us and say, yeah, I don't get it. And they'd be like, why would you use math on these things again? And it would be so obvious to us why you would use it. And to them, it would be like, yeah, I don't get it. And I guess when I look back on my initial pitch decks, I understand why they didn't get it, because they were pretty bad. But make the point that timing is almost everything when it comes to launching a company and the kind of things you're trying to do. We were perhaps a little bit ahead of our time, but it's really good to see how things have taken off. A couple years went by of us trying to land consulting customers. And we got our own little first office, we got a few customers, and we were working, but we weren't really getting paid, and it was kind of an uphill battle. We had a customer that was in biometrics. And if you're familiar with biometrics, so like, things like face recognition and my voice is my password and these sorts of things. We were working for a customer out of Chicago that was another VC-backed small company developing algorithms, and they were a great customer, all until the point where they weren't a great customer and they stopped paying us money and they went out of business owing us a lot of money. And that's pretty painful when you're a 3-person business where you haven't been getting paychecks and you're dependent on all the work you do generating the cash to pay the rent on your little office. The fortunately, we saw an opportunity to take those algorithms that we were working on for that company and some of the ideas that we hadn't been paid for and do something with it. I decided that we should go to a biometrics trade show. This is back in 2001. Our first trade show to try to promote what we were doing and try to land some new customers. So I spent all summer of 2001 putting together a trade show booth to promote our biometrics ideas in our company. And I packed all that up and I put it in the car and I went to head to the airport. And then I got a report that a small plane had hit a big tower building in New York City. And that was 9/11/2001. And so we knew that day that biometrics was going to be a much bigger deal. The convention was canceled. We didn't go to the trade show. But months later, we ended up at a trade show, the rescheduled one, and we met some friends from NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology, Standards and Technology. And they saw what we were doing, and they knew biometrics was going to be a bigger thing, and said, hey, you should apply to our big program, the Advanced Technology Program. We fund high-risk ideas. And I had applied to government programs already and gotten no SBIRs, gotten no funding. And that was kind of frustrating. You spend a lot of time writing applications, get nowhere. It's super frustrating. But we applied to the NIST ATP, and I say hubris here and humility. At some point, we had gotten through round number 2 on it, and I had an advisor that I really respected come to see me, and she said, how's the company going? And I said, well, I applied, it's kind of rough. We don't have many clients. We're kind of floundering a little bit. But we applied to this grant for like a couple $1 million, and it's going to be a big thing. And she's like, you're never going to get that grant. And I was kind of frustrated. I guess I'm the kind of guy that, like, if someone tells me I can't do it, it's immediately a throwing down the gauntlet kind of challenge deal. And I can name a few examples in my life it was like that. So I kind of said, you know what? I believe in us, I believe in me, and I believe in our team and our idea, and we should stick it out. And so through 2002, we spent a lot of time going to applying to this grant, and we finally got to the final round, and we went to DC, and they called us in, and we went in this committee room, and there were about 16 people around a big table, and then there were like 4 of us, myself, the professor, the co-founder, and a couple other folks that were kind of collaborators. And we went through an interview process, a bunch of questions, and at some point they look at us and they say, listen, we have 650 applications. Why should we give you the money? Why should we take a chance on you? And I know at that moment, I looked at my partners and I thought, well, they're senior guys. I'm sure they're going to step up and say something. But they all looked back at me and I knew, well, it was my moment and this was the time I had to. This was my part in the company. This was my time to step up. And I looked and I kind of leaned into the microphone and I said, well, if nobody's ever going to give you a chance, how are you ever going to make a difference? And I looked around the table and I saw that resonated really, really well with all the people on the committee. And the next thing I knew, we had $2 million. And that was pretty amazing. And that money launched our company, put us on track to doing more consistent research, and it gave us a baseline of money that we could then go out and chase other clients at the same time and build our team. And so I found out later, by the way, about a year after we got the grant, which was a 3-year grant, I sat at dinner with the project manager, the program manager that had asked me the question, and I said, someone had told me that we weren't going to get that when I did this thing, we weren't going to get it probably. How is it that we got it? And she said, the minute you walked into that room, it was yours to lose, because out of 650 applications, you were ranked as the #1 application. And that was like my first really big government proposal. And I'll probably never repeat such a great feat, but that was an amazing moment and something I'll never forget. A couple years into that grant of doing biometrics work, and it's all algorithm work, right? So it's like we're working on algorithms, just what we always dreamed of. We were like pigs in a mud pit here. It was great. But we came to a realization, this is about 2004, 2005, that biometrics was a tough place to earn a living in. And that our algorithms, while good, were not market leading and great. And we were probably going to run out of money when this grant ran out. And so we needed to think about, what did we want to be when we grew up? Did we want to be a biometrics company? Did we want to still be a consulting company? What did we want to do? So we wanted to stay true to our roots, of course, because we're signal and image processing dorks. But, which direction to take this? So probably one of the better moves that I ever made was I decided that, maybe I don't know everything and maybe I should start listening more closely to the customers. And so we started listening to the customers and all the people we had talked to. What do they want? What are their problems? What are their main pains that they would like solved? And when we heard that, we heard, well, we just don't want algorithms. We want software that runs the algorithms. We want the hardware that runs the software, that runs the algorithms. We want complete tested solutions out of you guys, not just a half-baked, algorithm in MATLAB. And so when I heard that, and I heard that that's what they wanted, including modeling and simulation, lots of modeling and simulation requests, we oriented our company and kind of factored our staff to support not just algorithms, but these other things that take the algorithms and make them into something much more useful. And that was a shining moment for our company and a great decision, because all of a sudden we started growing products and services, and our customer base grew, and our team grew, and everything was a lot better. Including, we started getting a lot more into mobile robotics, because signal and image processing, algorithms and sensing is a key part of doing a mobile robot, right? Just you see autonomous vehicles today. And so in about 2005, mobile robotics started to be a core part of what we were doing at Quantum Signal. So one point I wanted to make here is about culture. And Quantum Signal has always been about, since day one, culture. I founded the company because I wanted to work on hard problems that made a difference, and I wanted to work with smart people that I could respect. And those were the main motivators at Quantum. Notice what wasn't a motivator on that list. Anyone?
Shout it out.
Money. Money was not the motivator, and it still isn't. And I can talk more about that later. But building the kind of culture that you want to work in with the people you want to work in is super critical. Whether you're going to work somewhere at somebody else's company, you found your own, you need to make sure that you're going to fit in there, because that's the way, and you're with your people, because that kind of team is the one that's going to produce real results. And so I spent a lot of time building a great technology meritocratic culture at Quantum Signal, where it was less about the loudest voice in the room, and more about, data-driven decisions and the smartest way to do things, and consensus-driven decision-making. And these are important things if you want to build a great technical company. So in 2010, one of the things I thought about was, what are we going to do in terms of a headquarters? Because we've been renting space, and honestly, our spaces were pretty rough at times. But I found an opportunity to buy an old high school in Saline, which is just south of here. And I thought, this is the opportunity of a lifetime, because when you think about our company and what we do, being creative, learning all the time, and so on and so forth, I want my staff to think about having a creative environment and that they can think differently. And I want my customers to see that they're not walking into a cube farm. Like if you've ever walked into, like, for instance, a defense contractor, a lot of them cube farms as far as the eye can see. And I don't expect great big ideas to come out of cube farms. I just got to be honest. So we bought Union School in Saline and we made it our HQ. And we developed many, many more clients and did a lot of projects for people like Whirlpool and Sony and the Secret Service and the State Department and Amway. And I mean, we had customers all sorts of different places. My days were filled with, like, morning meeting with, with someone in entertainment, lunch meeting with the military, evening meeting with someone in automotive. And so that's how it was. And all the context shifting was a little bit challenging, but it was super fun. In 2018, we weren't marketing ourselves. Ford just kind of found out about us. And they came to us and they saw what we did. And I presented to one set of executives from Ford, and they liked it. And all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, another set of executives came out, and then another and another. And pretty soon, they called me to lunch and said, well, how would you like this to roll? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? They're like, would you like to just do work for us, or would you like us to buy you? And that was a pretty impressive moment, I have to say. Not something I expected. But they wanted us for our tech base and our team and our expertise. They were looking at our ability and to get things done, and our agility to move, our ability to move fast. And when you're a small company coming over with a big company, I mean, a lot of you may not have worked in either a small or big company, but you'll find in small companies, you can build, at least places like Quantum, you can build entire solutions in 3 months or 4 months, whereas a larger company will still be having meetings about it and not having written a single line of code yet. And so places like Ford and such, they saw our value, and Ford came in and acquired us in 2019, which meant a big shift in what we did. We did a lot of mobile robots and autonomy and sensing and perception, but now instead of doing that and all sorts of forensics, that and all sorts of entertainment stuff and whatever, now we were going to focus the entire company on intelligent vehicles and building better cars and AVs and these sorts of things. And it was a natural fit, and it was a great way to transition from all the different things we're doing and focus on kind of one area. And it used all of our expertise and capabilities. And so it was an extra strategic fit. It was going to be great, but Ford wanted us to bring our culture and mojo to some of the teams within Ford, because they wanted some of the folks within the big company to see how a small company does it and how we don't have layer after layer of management. We just get things done. And so that was a really positive thing. Since that time, I've been leading Quantum Signal for the last, as of March 3rd, it'll be 5 years since we were acquired. And as actually March 3rd, as of March 3rd, it'll be 25 years since we founded the company. Last year sometime, I started thinking about what was going on with me and what I wanted my future to be. And you know, when you're a small business, the founders are the heart and soul of the company, right? It's like they're not just technical leads, they're not just the people that make decisions. They are the ones that live, die, breathe, you know, eat, poop, everything that is the company. And they are the cheerleaders and they are the souls and hearts. And so, you know, I had to think a lot about what would happen for if I were to move on. But the goal of any good organization, and if you guys start a company, you should think about this right up front, is to build something great that's going to live on without you. Because if it's continually dependent on one person, that's a single point of failure. If I get hit by a bus and the company fails, I've failed. It's not a good design. And so it turns out when I looked around Quantum last year, I found that my company was running basically without me. I was a beautiful figurehead, very beautiful figurehead. I would drink coffee, I would give talks, I would make decisions, but for the most part, all the technology projects went on, all the engineering staff went on, all the finance went on, my management team was great. And so what would I do? So as of January 1st of this year, I retired from Quantum Signal. My CTO was my lifelong friend and partner, became the CEO and took it over without there's no beats skipped on that one. And the board seat that I held on Quantum's board, I transitioned to my CFO, and so she now sits on the board. And as of January 1st, I am no longer with Quantum Signal, effectively. I will say to you, it's a bittersweet thing, because if you're doing small business right, if you're founding a company, you are, not only are you the heart and soul of it, but you have given everything to it, right? It's like the Batman line. It's like, you don't owe these people anything. Well, hey, I haven't given everything, not yet. It's like you give everything to the business. And you have to, otherwise it's probably not going to succeed. So when you step away from the business, which I'm just learning as the last month, it's a very strange transition. It's strange to not put on Quantum Signal t-shirts every day. And it's strange to not think of yourself as the CEO or as the leader on the board and so on and so forth. But like I said to my friend the other day, it feels like I've been a compression spring that's been coiled up or compressed for 25 years by a big C-clamp that was Quantum Signal. And now that the C-clamp has come off, I'm just very slowly decompressing. And it's a weird, hard transition, but I'm really proud and honored to see that all the folks that Quantum carries on and does great work for Ford, and all the folks that I handed it over to are doing a great job. What am I going to do? I don't know yet. I have lots of folks that are hitting me up for various things, but I'm trying to figure out what my next move is. I'm 52. And so I've got a lot of life, a lot of piss and vinegar left in me, I think, and to found new companies or lead other organizations. And so we're going to figure it out. But I wanted to share this with you because last time I came up here and spoke, it was before I could make this announcement, and now the announcement's been made, and I'm a free agent. I think that this is a good lesson for everybody here to think about right up front. What is your exit strategy going to be? What's going to happen after? And it's been, I can tell you, Quantum Signal's been an awesome, wild ride, and I don't regret any decision I made, and it's been fantastic, and it's even more fantastic now to be here with you guys and thinking about what the future is going to be. And with that, I'll just end it and say thank you very much, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mitch.
Sure.
Okay, so the spring starts to compress 25 years ago when you're here and you're starting to build this company.
Yep.
You didn't do it solo, though. You did it with a prof.
Yep.
What's that experience like? What do they need to know about it?
Well, it's interesting. I had another grad student, and he and I ate lunch together every single day over here at the Commons, and we were thinking, what could we start company-wise? And we said, we should do signal processing, because it'll be fun, and we can do it, and it'll be worthwhile. But no one's going to, and his name was Gene, and no one's going to believe Mitch and Gene Enterprises. We're going to have to get someone that actually has a real name. And so we went and got one of the professors that we were deeply respected, a guy named Bill Williams, to get on the team. And between the three of us, we were able to kind of put together, cobble together this company. I would say working with a professor, it depends on the professor. And some are, and Bill, God rest his soul, he's passed away now, was a wonderful man and a fantastic talent and a famous guy in signal processing. But I think he would admit from day one, a businessman he was not. And so when you choose your partners, something to think about is what stage in life are they and how on board are they with the business? And so Bill was looking for something that was a fun way to transition out his technologies and a fun kind of after his days doing professorship for 35 years. It was kind of a retirement job in some ways. And he loved it and we loved having him, but that's different than having someone effectively that wants to grow the business for the next 25 years. And so...
So you weren't a business person either. You were an engineering student. You didn't know what a P&L sheet. I mean, this is all new to you as well. When you're thinking back to being a young Mitch, prospective founder, knowing what you know now, what do you wish you would have taken? What do you wish you would have brushed up on? What do you wish every college student would graduate with in terms of business education?
I would have been so much cooler then if I know then what I know now. No, kidding. The things that, yes, I mean, the thing about being an engineer is everybody probably, I don't know if you realize or recognize just directly is that...
Raise your hand if you're an engineer in the audience today. You're studying engineering.
Okay.
Thank you.
So engineers think they can do everything themselves. And that's a superpower and it is also a Achilles heel. And so when you with the hubris, I had enough hubris to say, hey, I'm going to start this company. I can figure out this and I can figure out that and I can figure out how to market. And because when you're a small company, you have to be marketing and you have to be accounting and you have to be all these things. The good things that I learned right up front, the good advice I got was get yourself a small business lawyer that has good experience, that can advise you based on all the track record they've seen before, because they can keep you out of a lot of trouble. Similarly, get a good accountant, because accountant can help you set up, here's how you set up your books. Not that they're going to do all your accounting for you, but here's how you set up your books and things like that. And so between those two things, and as well as the other good piece of advice I got back then was leverage a network, and leverage whatever network you have. There is no embarrassment in leveraging, hey, your parents have this friend who's a marketing person and would be happy to talk to you. Talk to the marketing person. Talk to anyone you can to gather as much information as you can. Fortunately, nowadays you have resources like this class, and all the resources around the university that you can tap on. Ann Arbor Spark is something you can tap on, these sorts of things. When I started, there was almost none of that kind of stuff. Sorry, Jesus.
So CFE didn't even exist until 2008. But to your point about tapping your network and leveraging the resources around you, you went to school here with several other people who are very entrepreneurial and who ended up making a run at that. Talk to us a little bit about what that common theme was between the students who had that mindset. What would distinguish you from the rest of the class?
I think a lot of the folks that I hung out with, they were always very technical folks that had a drive to make the world better. And so, if you go into engineering, and I apologize if they're like business and other students of this thing, and this is kind of broad as well, but like if you go into engineering for the right reason, it's because you want to use your technical superpowers to do good for the world and to make life better for humankind. And that's the motivator to become an engineer. And so, when I used to talk to folks around here, they were very quirky, very technical, much wanted to change the world, wanted to build things that worked, wanted to do cool stuff, and they weren't put off by challenges like, oh, well, we can't do that wasn't a thing. And so we could always do that. It was just to what extent. We built walking robots and we built all sorts of stuff when we were undergrads and grad students just on our own time and our own dime. And we did amazing things. And because we were naive and because we didn't know that we couldn't, no one had told us that we couldn't. And so we could. And so, at this point in your life, you should absolutely have that kind of mindset where you may not have a lot of experience, but you have a lot of brain power and you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and no one's telling you no. In fact, they're telling you the opposite. And you should take advantage of this time to do amazing things.
One of the student questions that we often get in CFE, and we hear a lot, is, hey, I'm really interested in being an entrepreneur. I'm really interested in being a founder. I don't have an idea, though. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what to build a company around. For students who are kind of stuck in that gray area, what is it that they can do to try to build that muscle, to try to hone in on what a company could be for them?
It's funny because it isn't just students that have this problem. There's a lot of folks that are frustrated in their career path that work in other companies that say, I want to strike out and do my own business. And they'll go out and do businesses that it turns out that end up like failing after a few months. or they give up on. Not failing, but they end up giving up on because they don't pursue things that they love and they're interested in. And so what I would suggest is if you want to start a company, you need to make a list on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper of things that get you excited, things that you love, and then try to marry up what you love with what you think is a viable business idea. And so,
where there's market demand.
Exactly. And so, for instance, my daughter, my 17-year-old, is a high school senior, and she loves lizards and reptiles. I don't know why. I like lizards too, but not the way she likes lizards. And so, you know, we talk about what her future is going to be like in herpetology, the study of lizards, and whether she wants to become a faculty member to study and do research in it, and so on and so forth. And she loves animals broadly, and she's kind of looking at veterinary. And so, you know, marrying up what she loves with what could earn her a living, what could be a viable business, is really that's a strong thing. I love signal and image processing, and I love building things that work. And so every day at Quantum Signal for 25 years was a joy and a pleasure to go. It was never a chore. Now, there were some shitty days, don't get me wrong, some really shitty days. But you know, in the end, the overall goals were great, and we loved what we were doing. And so you should figure out an idea about something you love. And if you want to start a company and you don't have an idea now, go work in industry somewhere else and get some experience and some flavor, and it may come to you.
You might have those aha moments.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, certain types of businesses, you may want to go and work in that industry first before you go start your own company. And so if you want to start, a friend of mine who's a real expert, I said to him one time, maybe I should start a coffee shop. He said, what do you know about coffee shops? I'm like, and he's like, you drank coffee in coffee shops, haven't you? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, and you ate pastries in coffee shops. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, but you don't know what it's like to run a coffee shop or work in a coffee shop. I'm like, you are correct, sir. And so he said, if you want to open a coffee shop, how about you go and work in one for 6 months and see what it really is? And that was not bad advice. Now, I neither have worked in a coffee shop nor have I opened a coffee shop since that discussion. But
we don't know what the next stage of your career is going to be either.
I very well may be.
Quantum Signal Coffee here in downtown Ann Arbor.
Exactly.
So
it's going to be dark roast all the time.
That works too. So on the flip side of that, we also get students who come in all the time, and I'd be interested to know if there's any of you in this class who have kind of posed this to us, who say, hey, I've got this really amazing idea that I don't want to tell anybody about because they might steal it. Can you help us build that company? You presented a slide that I stole a couple years ago in our Ann Arbor Spark, I think it was, talking about this. Elaborate a little bit on what that means. What's the secret squirrel problem?
I haven't seen this slide in years. The secret squirrel is, and I've over the years at Quantum, I would have lots of companies come in that want to like leverage us or collaborate with us and so on, or just wanted advice on how to start a successful company. Usually it's a lone gunman in their basement that has a good idea, and they often present me with like a 30-page NDA that say, here, sign this, and then we can talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, no. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it's a long, painful contract that I'm not going to pay my lawyer to review. We're not going to iterate on this. And honestly, things like NDAs sound really good in practice and in theory, but in practice, they're only as good as the paper they're written on. And so when you go out and share your idea, and you do have to share your idea with people to get feedback and input, potential customers, partners, these sorts of things, when you go out and share your idea, only share as much as you think is reasonable and logical. And if you find someone that you feel like they're going to steal your idea, maybe you shouldn't be sharing with that person. And so you're going to have to, the paperwork is not going to protect you. You need to develop the skills to be able to read the room. And so, you know, and Kenny Rogers once said, you know, you need to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, and when to walk away and run. And that is good advice in business. And so even when you sign big, comprehensive contracts with partners, it's only as good as the people that you're dealing with. And so make sure that you get into contracts and partnerships and deals and advisors with people that you can trust or that you feel you can trust. And if you don't feel like you can trust them, think twice about the situation. So
listen to your red flag. And to your point about kind of putting yourself in a position to otherwise benefit from working somewhere where you can gain that kind of experience, you have done a ton of hiring over the years at Quantum Signal, and you've talked extensively about the niche characteristics and the approach that you take to actually hiring people. Break that down for them. Let them know what it is that they should be looking out for from the other side of that table.
Sure. I mean, my technical team, I let my technical people, including my CTO and the whole team there, they define the standards for how they are going to interview the folks that they are going to hire. And so they give technical tests on site, they give remote tests, they give questionnaires, they do kind of working sessions in the office. They do all sorts of things because they want to make sure that there's truly an understanding of the person's capabilities and that there's a good match between what the person's capabilities are and what the job position is. Because the last thing you want to do is win that job interview and win that job position and find out 3 days later it is not what you thought it was, or your skills are not good enough or don't align with what they're looking for. That's a disaster. And we've had times at which folks at Quantum, I mean, we've fired very few people over 25 years, but there have been times when we parted ways with people. In a lot of cases, it's because there wasn't a good match. And I don't blame that person. I generally blame myself, or our team blames itself because we didn't do a good enough job vetting, or there was some miscommunication or something there. So there's a technical aspect to the alignment, but there's also a cultural aspect to it, and I call it the "Are you a human?" And I would often, they don't let me do the technical tests anymore because I'm the old creaky man with like goofy ideas. And so I would interview people toward the end, ask them questions to see what they were like as a person, whether they were willing to express their ideas cleanly and logically and be forthright and honest and truthful in this thing. And so asking you to express an idea or an opinion where there is no right answer. You know, I'm going to look to you as a staff member and say, I want your opinion on this. And there may be 5 different answers to that, but I want your opinion. And if you're a person that can't or won't express an opinion, I'm sure you can, but if you won't express an opinion for fear of being smacked down or being wrong, then it's going to be tough to work in a hardcore dynamic technical environment like Quantum Signal. And so we want to make sure that people are friendly, open, honest, that they're willing to collaborate, that they listen to other people, and that they're, you know, in some cases, you know, there's another quote from the movie Pulp Fiction many years ago, if anyone's seen that, where it's like, you know, just because you are a character doesn't mean you have character. And so I'm looking not only for people that have character, but in a lot of cases are characters, because I want creative folks. And so our thresholds and interviewing process is a lot different than, say, a GM or a Ford or an IBM or these sorts of things. But that's because we can't afford as a small business to hire someone that doesn't fit the mold, because if they don't, or it doesn't fit into the group, because if it doesn't fit and it doesn't align, we're going to be out all that labor for 6 months or a year, however long it takes to find that non-alignment. Not
to mention the cultural impact that person brings in, because once a culture goes toxic, nothing else matters. That's it.
Absolutely.
It's like a cancer within the organization.
One Debbie Downer is like, it's not the way to be, guys. I mean, I can tell you senior management doesn't want to hear the problems. They want to hear the problems and then the proposed solutions. And so if you come to me with all your problems, I'm happy to work through it with you, but I'm much happier if you come to me and say, look, we've got this critical thing, the robot failed, the entire program's in jeopardy, but here are 2 proposed solutions, what do you think? That is happy, sexy, awesome stuff, guys. That will get you ahead in any organization, I'm telling you. So.
I feel like that's another way of saying manage up.
Yeah, I mean, you could say it's managing up, or you could say that it's you know, being an American, not an Americant, and being one of those folks that's about solutions and not problems. And so we run into 1 million problems a day at Quantum Signal. We signed up for some of the hardest problems ever because smart people want to work on hard problems. But with hard problems, the goal is to come up with great solutions. And so if you come up with great solutions, we succeed. If we roll around in the hard problems and don't come up with anything, it doesn't work out so well.
Of course, everyone's interested in great solutions, especially those who can potentially make money and run business off of that. However, tying this back to a conversation we had with Gene Kesselman 2 weeks ago, Quantum didn't go out and say, hey, we want to build this company. We're going to get tons of VC money pouring in. We're going to go ahead and take all this in. And that put Mitch and his co-founders in a position to, when Ford acquired them, they owned the company that was being acquired.
Yep.
It wasn't like that was going to Sequoia Capital down the road. How has the decision to go after public sector funding and government grants and awards and the like, as opposed to VC, where would Quantum be today?
Organic is when you grow a company organically, and you know the difference between, like, there's a lot of entrepreneurships will send you, come up with a pitch deck, come up with an elevator pitch, go see some VCs, land some funding. You've got a 3-year timeline, you turn it around, there's got to be a multiple, and so on and so forth. I'm sure you guys have heard from experts here in this class already. But like, if you want to do something organically, it's a longer, slower, more painful road to take, but it can be more rewarding, and It's you can grow more along that line. And so, a lot of folks will say, well, the only way to do it is with outside investment. In our case, in fact, my partner, the professor, when we first started, he said, well, I don't understand why we're not going to get investors right away. And I'm like, Bill, we don't need investors, we need customers. We need customers to tell us that they want to pay for our services. And if we have customers that'll pay for our services, then we've got a good idea that's going to go somewhere in a company that's going to work. If we're just taking money from someone with our big idea, then there's the entire possibility that 3 years from now, after a long, slow, painful slog, that this company is going to go south and nothing really happens. And you see that constantly over and over and over, where folks have a good idea that perhaps hasn't been vetted properly, or has been vetted properly and the market changes. But after 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 years, they've burned hundreds of millions of dollars. And then the company goes out and they never earned a dime. And that's kind of a weird thing from my perspective. So Quantum Signal was supported on its own from day one. Myself and the co-founders put in $2,500 each, and we were revenue positive basically from day one. Now, the first few years, as I mentioned, we didn't get paid. We took a lot of sacrifice. It was a lot of sweat equity. But in the end, little by little, customers paying and government contracts and projects and grants, and commercial industry as well, we built a team and a company based on paying customers. And that was amazing. So we never really took out any loans. We never really used our credit line, honestly. We just did it from what we were getting paid. And by staying within our means and growing within the money that we had made, yes, the growth was slow. Yes, it took me 20 years and we were only 50 people. We weren't 5,000 people. But there were positives to that, and I could talk about that in another time. And so organic growth is a really positive way. We leveraged some government stuff. We leveraged tax credits when we could. We leveraged awards and grants. But generally what we did was we were getting money to produce something for the government. And so it was very rarely was it like just, here's free money. It's almost never that. Money is never really free.
No, it's not. And what I love about Quantum, and what I hope that you're taking away with some of this, is entrepreneurship does not come in one flavor. There's not a situation here where every founder, every CEO, every version of entrepreneurship has to look like the next Instagram or the next Google or whatever it might be. You'll notice Mitch keeps referring to Quantum as a small business. Typically, that is not what we're featuring, that is not what we're talking about here, but that is every bit as entrepreneurial as any other tech company you might see out in the world or be familiar with.
When you see things, and we kept it small intentionally. We could have grown even bigger than 50, but we kept it small because we knew and you'll see this when you found a company, guys, and I'm hoping a lot of you will. It's when you go from 2 people or 3 people to 10 people, there's a change in dynamic. When you go from 10 to 20, there's a change in dynamic. When you go from 20 to 50, there's a change in dynamic. And when you go up from there, every single increment, you need more mid-management, you need more HR people, you need to, all of a sudden there's gotta be an employee handbook that defines when you can go home and not go home, and shit that you never have to do when you're 5 people or 10 people. And so by keeping it within 50, we felt like we could be very high power and keep our team artisanally selected and do a really great job and make sure everybody on the team was performing and firing on all cylinders. And that was a really positive thing. I think that didn't result in the massive mega valuation that you would get if you had a company of 1,000 people when you were being acquired, but I don't care because we built something awesome and it was really valuable and worthwhile. And to today, it's cooking like gangbusters down in Saline. And so I feel like I built something to last, and I'm really proud of it.
And you built something to last, and to your point that you've kind of talked about in slides before, and this is a sneak preview of factor number 5 in the 6 factors for entrepreneurial success that'll be revealed later this month. You did it in a position that you struck timing gold. Mm-hmm. To come out with biometric algorithm right after 9/11 is just amazing timing, as morbid as that might be.
Yeah.
But then as you're looking forward, you've continued to build along a way that you became valuable enough to potential acquisition targets to where Ford then in 2019 is like, hey, we'd love to buy you out. Sure. What is it about timing? What is it about creating your own luck? How do you go about doing that?
Creating your own luck the quote there from Louis Pasteur, chance favors the prepared mind. And anyone who's been a Boy Scout, I was never a Boy Scout, they wouldn't let me in, a guy like me. But like the Boy Scouts will say, always be prepared. And so, when you go and do things, everyone hears the stories about like, oh, Bill Gates was on the curb outside CES and ran into some executives, and all of a sudden he was able to sell his first OS, and it was just coincidental, and and he got lucky and things like that. And yes, there's a tremendous amount of luck involved in success when you start a business, but you can enhance your probabilities of success by making your own luck. You hang out in the right place at the right time, and you go the extra mile, and you apply when other people are like, yeah, I don't know, that seems like a lot of work. When you get that thing where there's that great opportunity that happens over Christmas break, that like you're gonna have to give up some time with your family to go do it, sometimes you just gotta go do that. And I'll tell you a good story, and this is probably the best story I have about making your own luck, is I was a high school student in the science fairs. And this shows what an old man I'm recalling high school stories. High school student doing science fairs, and I was at the International Science Fair in Pittsburgh, and all the other kids were dismissed. Everybody was dismissed to go to like lunch or whatever, but I was there to show off my project and get feedback from the judges and from anyone who wandered by, because I was super proud of my project. And so I stuck around, and so there was this big empty hall of projects and me and my project. And this old man kind of wandered up to me, and he sat down in a chair, and he started to ask me about it, and I talked to him for about an hour. And he introduced himself as Glenn. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. The guy's asking me really great questions and making really high-end suggestions. He's clearly a scientist. And he walks away, and I see my chemistry teacher from my high school walk by and see me talking to Glenn, but he doesn't interrupt. And he walks by, and so Glenn thanks me, and I thank Glenn, and he walks away. And my chemistry teacher comes up and says to me, so, you have a nice little chat there? And I'm like, yep. And he's like, who was that? And I'm like, oh, it's a guy named Glenn. He's like, yep. You know who Glenn is? I'm like, nope. He's like, Glenn's last name is Seaborg. Glenn Seaborg is a Nobel Prize winner that discovered a number of transuranium elements. He's a famous guy in physics and in chemistry. In fact, they named an element after him, Seaborgium. And so I had an hour audience with a Nobel Prize winner about my high school science project. And I would not have had that audience or had that discussion had I not stuck around. And that's what I think about when I say make my own luck. And that's how it is when you run small businesses. You've got to make your own luck because no one's making it for you. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but
yeah, no, I mean, I think it illustrates the point too, that taking advantage of the opportunity you have while you're a student to soak up moments where you get time, attention, and frankly, windows that you're not going to get after you graduate.
Absolutely.
So, a couple of you submitted questions, but if you have a question, raise your hand. We can run up to you with a mic here. Armin, you had a question?
Hi, my name's Arman Kamat. I'm wondering if you could expand on how signal processing works, as well as how you see it being applied in everyday technology.
Well, signal processing, things like AI and machine learning and what you see all the stuff today is really, in my opinion, a subset of signal processing. Signal processing is a set of mathematical algorithms and approaches that date back many, many, many years that allow you to apply you apply this math in various ways to various types of data sets to extract what you want. And so in finance, they call it financial engineering. And they use techniques from signal processing effectively to try to predict what's next in terms of the stock movement. In things like, audio and like DVDs. Anyone have DVDs anymore? It's like things like DVDs. You use compression to compress the movie into something digitally on that disc, and then you decompress it. And really, the compression and decompression algorithms are signal and image processing algorithms. And so, though you hear a lot about ML and artificial neural networks and things like that, that is just a small slice of the wider field. And so when I say we were AI before AI was cool, we would never call it AI because we always hesitated to call it intelligence because it does great things, but calling it intelligence is a whole nother leap. And so that broad AI moniker that they use today covers all the algorithms pretty much that we used to do, and we used to talk about. Data science is another one. So data sciences and a lot of the techniques from data sciences root back to signal and image processing and database management and these sorts of things. And so, there are great classes here. If you guys have time and the technical wherewithal, right across the street here at the ECE building, they teach amazing signal and image processing courses. And I would deeply recommend that stuff to anybody. It's great. So I can talk to you afterwards more. So.
Great question. Raise your hand if you have another question at all. In the meantime, I want to ask Mitch, what is the biggest myth about all the AI hype that all of us can't escape every day, all the noise?
I think the biggest myth is that it's intelligent. And I think that's the bottom line, is that these are systems that are as good as the data they're trained with, and you can teach them and you can tweak them, and you can marry the neural networks up to things like hierarchical rule sets and things like this to generate some really impressive results that make you feel good and that fit some really great niches. You know, they can diagnose this and diagnose that, and that's fantastic stuff. Don't be sold on the notion that, you know, that somehow that ChatGPT is really, you know, going to be emergent and become Skynet if you're a Terminator fan anytime soon. That's not what these things are, and that's not what they're going to become anytime soon. And so, you know, they're good. It's a great application in the right. It's good technology in the right application, but it isn't going to solve every one of the world's problems. And there's a lot more nuance to it than you would expect to get it to go where you want to go. And so, if any of you are writing your term papers with ChatGPT, I deeply recommend you double check and reread those papers before you turn them in. And so, you know, 80% is good, and then 20% of garbage is not going to get you very far with the right professor. So.
All right. Thank you for the education, Mitch. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Good? What's it? Oh, yeah.